I should make mention at the outset that some of you may know that Richard Dodd has been hospitalised at least for the last 2 weeks. Not for me to go into his medical situation, but it's been serious, and our best understanding is he may be coming out of hospital sometime in the next few days, but he's been through it. And a big agenda for this evening, so a lot to get through. And we've deferred the Environment Agency. They were going to come and talk to us, and we deferred them already earlier this year, so we're deferring them again. And I'll come back to it, but the peer review is going to be in April rather than this March meeting. So it's apologies for absence then, please, Julia.
Yes, we've got apologies from Councillors Ahmed, Dodd, Seagal, Ely and Greenwell.
Okay, thanks. And disclosure of interest, anyone got the slips of paper there, anything where it needs to be cleared, please just complete the slip and submit it. We come to minutes of the last meeting. And Kevin, I'm aware that you've got concerns about what was set out in the January minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, can I just try and say, if you go back to last year, there was an issue at one of our meetings where there was a dispute about what was said and what wasn't said. And from there, the policy has generally been to try to condense and curtail the minutes, to just try and feature the key decisions. Kevin's made a submission into Bev to say that part of the minutes of the January meeting, and particularly, I'll just come back to it, the section, it's 95, recording of council meetings, and Kevin's point is that it's going into all sorts of detail, and whereas the other items are much more condensed. What I've got, Kevin, is a suggested amendment. It's adopting all that you were suggesting to try to summarise the discussions, but with just a small addition. So if we can perhaps you go down, please. To help you with it, it's exactly the wording that you had in your email to Bev, but I've added 3 sentences, I think it is, on the end.
Thank you. Yeah, from my point of view, I don't have any particular objection to it, but I think, and if it's going to be the easiest thing to do, then we should go with it. But I think there is still an outstanding question as to the legality of what happened.
Well, that's a matter you can take up separately. I think what we're trying to, what I've done is try to see if we can agree the minutes from January, and this is taking your suggested amendment in full and just adding the. It just seemed to be incomplete in the way that you'd put it. I've just added that I asked that the policy was observed, and we then had the recess.
Yeah, I think that this is fine. I'm happy to second this.
Okay. So if everybody's had the chance to read what's in that slip, what I'm doing is trying to go back to the January, the minutes of the January meeting. And I'm suggesting that as we go through them, section 95.
Alan, sorry. Bev's take on it was more accurate though. This just seems like it doesn't really tell the story.
Yes, but the point is that we've had disputes over the narrative in minutes before, and since then we've had advice from, I think half of the time, but advice from the SLCC saying that really minutes should just reflect decisions to prevent the sort of arguments of the day becoming part of an official record, because there are instances of other parish councils that use minutes to relitigate arguments, and that's not really best practice.
And I think this note, and I've had a chance more than all of you this evening to try and look at the wording there. I think this note reflects what happened in the meeting in headline form, which is what we're trying to adopt in terms of minutes. And if you look at the matters that were raised elsewhere in the meeting, they follow that format. They're just really a précis of what's happened.
Sorry, Alan, so what was the final decision? Because
Well, 95 of January was me tabling the policy on recording of meetings. If you read through what's in the revised text, that was agreed and approved. I then asked that the new policy was observed, and as it notes, Kevin or Councillor Wilson was refusing to do that, and there was a recess to give time to reflect, and then the meeting resumed. And if you go back to the minutes from that meeting, I'm at 96, it should be 96, not 95, where we're at the staffing committee, and it says, when the meeting resumed, Council Hall requested that the Council will cease from recording, so we've got it all logged there about what did or didn't happen.
I'm just wondering why it's happening tonight, if all of this was,
If we adopted the
if we
policy,
adopted the policy.
why are we just carrying on with it?
Legislation says that a public meeting has to be recorded if someone wants to.
Does that mean the policy doesn't stand then, because we've all passed it?
No, you're right to raise it, and really it should be that you're with the camera to follow the policy, Kevin.
I don't think that's right though. I think that you and Sue and Gillian have received legal advice saying that that's not a lawful implementation of the policy.
No, I haven't received legal advice in fact. I took legal advice before we got to all this in January, and if you recall, it's no longer going to be detailed in the minutes of the meeting, but Adam Harvey was pointing out to that meeting, to you and to me and to others, that the policy as it stood with 1.12 out was a legal and compliant policy. And that's why we ended up with this situation towards the end of the meeting where I was asking you to be with the camera, and really Michaela's right, we should be adopting that policy again this evening.
Because we have been advised that you are going to cause disruption.
That's not
Because,
true.
Kevin, as a council, as a democracy, we decided that you have to be with the camera if you want to record. If you don't, then you should be asked to leave the meeting. What's the point of having a council to make a policy that you're not going to stand by?
Well, Gillian, can you just confirm, did you receive an email from the Free Speech Union setting out their legal advice? As far as I was aware, Alan and Sue were copied into it as well, so they should have received and read it and understood.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And
And that advice was that the council's interpretation of the policy was incorrect?
It was.
Okay.
But that was the
That was
advice
before
that
the
we...
No, that was after the meeting. I subsequently sought further legal advice.
Well, I haven't seen that, Kevin.
I've got a copy here if you want it. It was copied to your town council email address, but I know that there's been issues with that in the past. Would anyone else like a copy, by the way?
Oh, you got a copy, Kevin?
Yeah, of course. There you go. Will, do you want a copy?
Yeah.
Okay, there. Do you want a copy, Rosie?
I can't ever recall seeing this, even though it's supposed to be copied to me. Did you receive it, Sue?
I can't recall it.
No, I haven't seen it. The difficulty I've got, Kevin, is that we as a council have adopted that policy, and I have a lot of faith in Adam Harvey as a man of some years standing in a senior position with Cramlington. He was assuring you and I and others at that meeting that with 1.12 out, the policy was legally compliant, which is why in that meeting I was asking that you to stay with the camera.
Because at the moment, it says on here, on that basis there is likely a breach. Well, likely doesn't mean there is. And at the moment, the policy stands in the council that you have to be with the camera. So until they can say this is absolutely a breach, then we should be following what the council said.
The point that I would make is that I put forward a proposal at the last meeting that we defer consideration of the
But we didn't
policy.
defer.
No, but my point is that I suggested that proposal precisely because it was likely that there were going to be further disputes of it, and it would have been better that we sought actual legal advice over it to try and avoid this sort of situation.
But you still
I
haven't
would-
got to the point where we've got anything from anyone to say this is at breach.
Well,
guidance,
yes.
can I just say that the guidance note that goes along with the legislation does talk about unmanned recording, but it also has a clause that says in the event your current policy is in contradiction with the law, then those points or clauses shouldn't be followed, and then they should be amended at the earliest convenience. So just because we've got policy, if it's lawful, it doesn't mean that we then should be following that policy.
One of the important paragraphs in this letter is the second last paragraph on the first page, which begins the free speech union. The council's interpretation, led by Adam, who I have a lot of respect for, and he's done a lot of good work and he's been very, very helpful to us, but as far as I know, he's not legally qualified, so we can't give legal advice. This is legal advice. This paragraph says that as a matter of construction, the council's interpretation is an error. The clause applies to anybody intending to record any such individual seated in the public section. There is no ambiguity. A councillor recording the meeting itself is not prohibited from using unmanned equipment if the equipment is intended to be directed at councillors rather than the public, which it is.
I understand it is, and it may well be that we have to revisit the policy. I've never heard of the FSU until I received the correspondence from him earlier on this year in the lead up to the discussion about our policy. I have no grounds for thinking that they're an authority on recording of meetings in that legislation from 2016. And I'm therefore asking, now that what Michaela was rightly pointing out earlier, if you'd please man the camera in line with the policy that we agreed in January.
I'm not going to man the camera, Alan. Councillor Harrison's had his hand up for a while.
I'll just remark, I wasn't at the last meeting, everybody, but I know of the Free Speech Union. I know the guy who runs it. He's a lord as well. He's a very outspoken advocate of free speech. And what I'd hate for this to do is gain more legs and be spoken about in a more public sense. I think it might reflect badly on all of us in a council. I believe that is the path forward. I don't know if this is going to come out in peer review or not as well. I spoke to Adam Harvey as part of the peer review process a week or two ago, and he seemed to think the solution was for the town council to have their own kit and to be,
Which is in the papers for this
Yeah.
evening.
so is that the path forward, where, because I'm aware that previous meetings which I've either been in or have had minutes from have been highly disruptive because of this issue, and obviously we don't want to derail another meeting today with it. Is there a path forward to tonight, or some form of compromise, everybody? Just, while we work on the next item there, Alan.
Yes, Michaela.
I don't want to sit in a meeting, and I don't think we should carry on with a meeting when we've adopted a policy as a council. And at this moment in time, nobody has come to us and said that we cannot do that. It says we likely can't do it, and me and Sue researched this free speech union. I mean, it doesn't look great, to be honest. So, as a council, we've adopted a policy, and therefore, I don't want to be in a council that's not a council, it's not a democracy. At this moment in time, you shouldn't be filming the meeting unless you're with the camera.
Well, that's not true. They've pointed out specifically that the interpretation the council's using is not correct, that it is in error. They have then said that likely there is a breach of Article 10 human rights and of wider public law principles. That they can't say definitively one way, because that's ultimately for the courts to decide.
Well, then we'll take it to court.
Well, I'd be careful saying that. That's a dodgy route for us to go down.
Well, it's dodgy recording people when there's a policy saying you can't do that.
All I would say is that I didn't want to have this discussion tonight. That's why I proposed the fear and consideration of the policy at the last meeting, and why I've sought several different occasions to have a mediated discussion with people about this. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened.
Kevin, we're aware of all of that, but we are where we are. You sought to defer it, and the decision of the meeting in January was not to defer things. We then went on to enact this policy, and despite what's in this FSU letter, which I've seen for the first time this evening, what I'm prepared to do is review the situation after this meeting this evening in light of this FSU letter and Dan's remarks about it. But in the meantime, I don't think it's an encumbrance in line with what you were doing at the last meeting for you to accompany the camera. You can sit there in the chair beside the camera and man it in that way, and we can carry on with the meeting, because we've got a lot of business to discuss. We're going to be here till very late this evening if we can't carry on.
Yeah, and I'd rather sit at my desk for that. I don't have to man the camera. I did that as a courtesy at the last meeting because tensions were very high.
Are you able to still contribute if you're manning the camera, Kevin?
I think eventually we agreed that, although there was some objection to it at the last meeting as well.
So, is a path forward, and just, I'm not saying do this or whatever.
Yeah.
If Kevin's able to contribute and man the camera, does that work?
There's nothing to stop it. I mean, bring the camera forward to enable you to contribute. Why can't you?
Well, because of the way that it's set up, it doesn't really capture all of the room. I'd rather, on this occasion, I didn't at the last meeting as a courtesy to everyone because tensions were quite high and I wanted to reduce them, but I'd rather stay sat at my desk on this occasion.
Well, as a courtesy, I'm asking you to man the camera. Bring it forward if you need to, reset it if you need to. Rosie, you're trying to make a point on this.
I agree with Dan, we've got a lot to do and I would rather we just move on with the business, but you know, we don't want to get really picky about what we mean by manned, for example. So if we do have a recording device here, technically, is that manned? I know, you know, you can control it via phone.
The policy doesn't cover
But
all
what does
good.
manned mean? So if Kevin had a device on his table, like another phone for example, which was linked to that phone, is that manned? Or is it the fact that he has to stand at the camera? See, it's all these little ins and outs that we need to get into, which I'd rather not do in the meeting when we've got so much to do.
I could agree there's so much to do, but the policy is very clear. It's in black and white. It's all there, and it was approved by a majority.
Well,
of
with
the
respect, the policy isn't all clear because you've now got advice from the Free Speech Union saying that there's still an awful lot of ambiguity.
And I've just made the offer to review it after this meeting in light of what's set out in that letter, because I'd never seen that letter until about 10 minutes ago, Kevin.
There's dispute about this. Am I able to, about this whole issue? I think that we are obviously going to have a discussion outside of the meeting, which I've offered and has been offered to the council on 3 or 4 occasions, and unfortunately not taken up by yourself, Alan. Can I move a motion to move on to the next item of business, Gillian?
If you would allow as well, what I can do is I can take this forward with the SLCC and NAC to get their legal people to give the council, they will be giving us a legal opinion.
Well, that's fine, but we need to be able to carry on with the meeting this evening, and I'm offering to pause the meeting for 5 minutes so you can reset the camera and enable you to participate in the meeting and also to record it.
I'm not going to do that, and I would like to move that we move on to the next item of business.
You're forcing me into the situation we got to at the meeting back in January, where I was inviting you to leave the meeting, and I'd really rather not get to that. I'm simply asking, in line with the policy that we all agreed, as a democratic organisation and by a solid majority, that the policy is adopted which requires people to man the camera.
For the avoidance of doubt, I am formally moving a motion. I would be grateful if someone could second it, that we move on to the next item of business so that we can continue with the rest of the meeting.
That's not a council, Kevin. I know obviously
Sorry,
Dan will want to move on and I do appreciate that, but at the last meeting in January, we passed it to say you have to man the camera. As a council, the majority was to do that, and Alan has every right to say to you, if you're not going to go by the policy, then you'll have to leave the meeting. And if you refuse to leave the meeting, then he's been advised he can call the police because you've been disruptive.
Well, no, I'm not being disruptive simply by sitting in a seat.
Can I man the camera?
Well,
In the spirit of getting on with the
you can, but can we also just put this to bed? I've moved a motion that we move on to the next item of business. Could I please have a seconder for that so that we can continue with the meeting? Okay, can we please have a vote? All those in favour of moving on to the next item of business? All those against?
Not under these circumstances.
Okay.
Dan's just offered to, you might need to, can we pause the meeting for 5 minutes?
I can sit there, Alan, it's not a problem. Yeah.
But you might need to reset it so that you are still involved in the meeting, Dan. You can hear and participate in what's going on.
Yes.
Can you pause the camera while we just check?
Let's adjourn the meeting for a few moments.
Pardon?
Let's adjourn the meeting for a
Yes,
few
I am
moments.
suggesting
Yeah.
that. Yes.
Yeah. Because once we get under 107, everybody,
Right.
If at any stage you can't
back
hear
on.
what's being said, or you're not able to make your contribution, you can just let me know, or let Gillian know, so that we make sure you
Perfect.
fully. And thank you for your offer to say
Thanks, Alan.
with the equipment.
Very sorry.
That's all right.
So can I reel back then? And what I was trying to do was point out the amendment of item 95, this recording of council meetings policy from the January meeting. And with that amendment, which is set out in the slip, I'm asking now if we can approve the meeting from the minutes of the meeting from January. If I can just go through page by page. With page 1, everyone okay with that? Page 2, with the amendments that I've just highlighted on section 95.
Yeah.
Page 3. On page 3, it's, I think your minutes might say 95 on formal approval of the staffing committee, it should say 96. Okay with that, and then page 4.
Yeah.
So that's the minutes of the January meeting approved. And I don't have any matters arising. Anyone else?
I just wanted to ask, at the last meeting we appointed the staffing committee, but it doesn't appear to have met since then. Is
No.
that correct?
Yes.
Can I suggest that it might be prudent for the staffing committee to meet at some point soon?
It's a matter for that committee, Kevin, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, with all matters arising, we're into planning, and what we have is this new format of trying to be more efficient and not do the fortnightly planning meetings. I'm really referring to you as Chair, Sue, and you, Will, as Vice Chair. Do you feel as though this new trial like this is working okay?
Yeah, well, we'll compost
working as
most
intended.
of it.
Spending a lot of time.
You compost most of it in my absence, didn't you? About a month or more ago.
Well, I've worked with Bev
Yeah.
on it directly, and I've copied everybody in on
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
that
So yes,
I felt needed
I'm happy
input,
with-
but it
I'm
seems to
happy
be
with
working well.
Okay. And we also have in the planning agenda item the meeting that you had on the 23rd of February. You wanted to add anything at all with that meeting?
Not really, I think it's quite, if you've read it, it's quite explicit. I've set a sort of personal target to try and get through stage 1, which is the background work to what we need to change in the neighbourhood plan. I've given us 3 months to do that, and we've set up we're going to set up a series of workshops and invite members of the community to try and move that on. We already have a list of names, and we're about to do that. The next stage would be to work on the outcome of that with Joanne Garrick and start any formal consultation on what we want to change. And I'm hoping to turn around in a year.
I apologise to you both. What I intend to do before this evening's meeting was to get email details for 2 contacts that I made. They did this Town and Parish Council conference event at County Hall last Thursday evening. I went along to that and had a very good discussion with a senior lady in the planning team at County Hall. They're offering to work with you around they're working on the local plan clearly, but this was an offer to help with the neighbourhood plan.
Are they Northern County Council officers?
The 2 officers that were at this...
They are
this
planning
conference.
officers.
Pardon?
They are planning officers.
Yes.
Oh, well,
yeah.
we very definitely want them on board. Can you give me their details?
Okay, I apologise, I should have sent you them, but I've got their email addresses at home and I'll wire them on to you.
We'll invite them to
It was a
the
very
workshop.
constructive conversation with this lady. She was really very keen to try and help us.
Happy to.
Yes, Kevin.
I was going to say, it's an excellent report, thanks very much. You've answered one of my questions, which is when is it going to be finished, because I think it's been dragging on for a little bit.
Kevin, this is planning, that's my target.
Yeah, fine. I was wondering, because I'm not across all the details of planning in the neighbourhood plan, could you just update us broadly on what all these things mean, deleting these different paragraphs, just in broad strokes? And then the other question was, there was a meeting on Saturday of the local Conservatives, and the cabinet member for planning came along, NCC came along to it. And he mentioned specifically that it would be good if we could formally recognise the land behind the fire station as green space in the neighbourhood plan as a way to try and prevent outrageous amounts of house building. Is that something that we can factor into the local plan?
If it's
Into the
in
neighbourhood plan?
greenbelt, we can't designate it.
Okay.
And that's the, I think without having with a sort of
It's
check.
it's just something.
I think it is in greenbelt. I think the schools were on greenbelt land.
Yeah.
All along. I'm just trying to find the minutes to go through them. Do we actually have time to do this, Alan, or would it be better if I sent everybody a...
I mean, I think the notes are very explicit, but I
I think,
don't
very explicit,
why don't you come along to one of the first workshops?
Yeah,
We're going to put 3 dates up and invite the members of the community we've already identified as willing to help. Why don't you come along to that? Because I'll be doing possibly with Amina, a PowerPoint presentation about the whole thing,
Yeah.
what we want to change, what the remaining questions are, how people can help. And the intent of those first few meetings will be that hopefully people will go off into groups and say, we'd like to look at that, and
Yeah.
go away and do it themselves and come back with some feedback. And I think that's probably the best way of getting you that information, because I
Yeah,
can go through those and it would take 2 hours, because that's how long the
Oh,
meetings
no, that's fine. That's very kind of that, thank you.
Okay, I'm moving on from planning then, and we go to the next item, which is the report and recording of town council meetings. I've tabled this for councillors to consider. It's asking us that we buy our own equipment to record our monthly town council meetings. It would enable us to have ownership of those recordings and to post them onto the website in line with giving our meetings as a matter of open public record. Estimated costs are in here, and what I've done is asked Ian Clough if he would help with the manning of the camera, so that if we do have the camera with our own equipment, we're able to comply with our own policy about having it manned. And I'm also, in contemplating this, suggesting the idea to councillors about having our town council meetings in Merton Hall rather than the more cramped council offices. It's, if you go back to January with some of the people attending the meeting beyond the councillors that were there, it gets pretty tight, and I'm suggesting alongside this proposal at agenda item 107 that it's not a mandatory rule, but I'm saying that we might mainly hold our meetings in Merton Hall. So open for discussion, item 107. Yes, Rosie.
I'm in support of it. The only question that I had is, you speak about putting recordings on our website. I know we're doing peer review at the moment where it looks at how we communicate with residents. As part of that, can we look at considering maybe putting it on our social media as well, just because I know a lot of people are on Facebook. I know Councillor Harrison shares a lot of the local Facebook groups, just about meeting residents where they are and where they can access this information. Just something to consider as part of the peer review.
I don't know what Cameron's stance is on this, and I don't know if it will come out in peer review, but I hear what you're saying. Yes? Yes, good morning.
Would this stop this recording on a personal phone? Or we're going to have all these different cameras?
It's a difficult one for me, Michaela, because, and this is a conversation I would rather have had in private with Alan, and indeed when he put this to me at the end of the last January meeting, I asked if he could speak with me in advance of taking this further, and unfortunately that didn't happen. The difficulty that I've got is that for the past year, this council has made very, very clear its strong objections to being recorded, and because of that it's difficult for me to trust that this is an honest attempt to record the meetings itself. I would suggest that perhaps maybe for the first couple of meetings I do continue to do my own recordings, because I'm not comfortable that there wouldn't be any shenanigans arising from the council doing its own recordings, but ultimately well, I don't know, but finding inventive ways to prevent the recordings from taking place.
I'm not listening to this. That is absolutely shocking that you could speak into our council and talk about lack of trust.
Well,
I'm not listening to this.
I'd rather you be steered, Sue.
I know, but I'm sorry, Alan, that is just despicable to accuse Ponteland Town
I'm
Council.
sorry, I don't
Say we're being duplicitous, I know
If
what
I
you're saying.
thought I could trust
Yeah.
Ponteland Town Council,
If
I've been here for 12 years plus
can I
and
ask you
I've
to
never
withdraw the
been
remarks?
spoken
You're
to
trying
like
to
that.
say we'd be so duplicitous as not actually record the meetings and then publish them properly. Why on earth would we do that, Kevin?
Alan, I go back to what I said. Over the past year, you've come up with very inventive ways, in particular the policy that you tried to implement at the last meeting, to try and prevent me from recording. And then next month you turn around and say, let's introduce the recording. I think any reasonable person would think that there's something fishy going on there.
Alan has taken advice from Adam Harvey. It's not just Alan's or Ponteland Town Council. We've got much higher up people with a lot of experience advising us on this, Kevin. It's not just Alan v Kevin.
Well, I just want to be clear though that the particular clause that was put into the policy last month, which was subsequently withdrawn, was specifically of Alan's wording.
But do you feel that you are being quite disrespectful as a town councillor? You are not abiding by policies we've adopted. You're now saying that we're suspicious and we're going to be getting up to shenanigans. And it just doesn't seem the behaviour of a councillor.
Can
I'm sorry to you. Can you ask you to withdraw the remarks where you're trying to suggest we should be so duplicitous as a council to record the meetings and then not put them on public record? That's some obtuse way not to actually record our own meetings.
That's not quite what I said. I said that it was difficult for me to trust that you wouldn't find an inventive way to use this recording to stop it. But
Can I just say, once the equipment is purchased, that will be run through the office. We've got Ian who has agreed to man the thing, so we would ensure that what was recorded is the official recording.
And I back you up on that, Jenny, and say we have to trust our independent staff.
yeah.
So can I ask you to withdraw the remarks where you're trying to suggest that we're so duplicitous as to not actually publish our own recordings?
I'm not going to withdraw the remark because it is still a valid concern that I've got. It's not disrespecting the staff or anything like that.
It's disrespectful to the integrity of the
hang on,
room.
sorry, just to be clear though, the point, the staff will do what the council asks them to do. My concern is that the councillors on the council say, well, I'm going to decide that such and such is a vulnerable person and therefore in line with the recording policy we're going to cease recording. That is a scenario that I can imagine happening. I'm not saying that it will, but just for my own sake, I would say that that's probably the course of action.
I'll come back to you, Michael, in a moment. I want to move the meeting on. I'm going to take advice about it, Kevin, but I think what you're suggesting is attacking the integrity of the people that are councillors in this room. And it's an outrageous thing. If you've got some evidence, a basis for saying it, I'm moving on. I may well be writing to you to ask you to withdraw the remark from this meeting, because I do believe it attacks integrity in the way that I've said. What do you want to come in with, Michaela?
So I agree with this policy, this suggestion. But I can't see the point to spend £500 to try and get away from this issue if it's still going to go on.
Well, what's been suggested is you're going to do it for 2 meetings and then stop.
And are you going to put that in writing, or is it just going to carry on?
Well, I would just like to make, look, I don't know, because this is all a hypothetical situation about the future. I welcome...
The council are trying to help you, because you want it recorded, nobody else does. They're trying to help and say, look, we will buy the equipment, so it's all done to make us feel better as well, that it's not on your private phone, it's all monitored by the council, for everyone's sake. So it would be good if you could then go, okay, I'll put my camera away and it's all done officially.
Michaela, I am willing to trust the council on an ongoing basis. I think that there has been a culture over the past year of trying to object to the recordings and finding novel ways, and quite upsetting language at times has been directed towards me over this issue. This is what I proposed last year in the budget, and the council voted against it at that time. So now that this is... Sorry?
You forced the hand.
Well, whatever the situation is, the point is, in any case, this doesn't prevent anyone from recording meetings. Anyone can still record a meeting. It doesn't make it redundant, and I'm going to retain all the rights that I've got to continue to record the meeting. Whether or not I do record the meeting, it could well be that actually it works fantastic and it's really high quality and it's beautiful and the council is tip-top behaviour. There's no weird directions issued to staff to stop the recordings or anything like that, and that's fine. But it's going to take some time to rebuild that trust back with me. There has been a lot of lost trust, I think.
I'm proposing, in line with this agenda item 107, that we actually do purchase our own equipment and operate it in line with what's set out in this note in item 107. I need a second for that.
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, we need to vote on that proposal then. Okay, I think that's passed. We need to go ahead and purchase that equipment.
If it was an abstention or a vote against.
It's a vote against. not because I don't agree with it, but I just don't agree with all these cameras, and it's ridiculous. We're town council, is going to be 2 cameras, there's audio equipment, so until Kevin decides to stop recording, then I don't think we should have all these cameras.
Okay, do you want your disagreement recorded?
Yes,
Michaela?
please.
Okay, now moving on to agenda item 108, and I'm passing over to you, Julian, on there.
Yes, we've had the report from the internal auditor, Mike's auditor. I think everyone's received a copy of his report. I think the only thing that he did raise, and just to remind us, was about the research and 10 item to be discussed, which has to be included for the 31st of March. I've included in the pack what Research and 10 actually included, the various elements, and how we have worked toward fulfilling those requirements. So did anyone have any questions on that particular item?
Yes, Ruth.
It's just in relation to the email addresses.
Yes.
Do we know roughly when we're going to get those implemented, and if it's going to be, might be a technical question, but an easy way for us to move all of our emails from our current email addresses that we're using onto these new government ones, just easily. It might not be, there might be, we just have to forward everything. We just wondered if that's possible.
Yeah, there was a deadline of the 31st of March for the generic office.gov.uk address, which we've had for a long time, and the clerk and the staff, so we've had that ongoing. There isn't a deadline put forward by the government as yet for the .uk for councillors. However, we are working towards that. We've got meetings, coming up with County Hall to see if they could do it. So I'm hoping we should have that in within a year.
Okay.
For everyone.
There's no deadline to work to, but the general thrust of this, probably across this year, is to get things in place where each councillor's got a .gov.uk address.
Yeah, I was just thinking of
We will
councillors.
bring that up with them about how
Yes,
to
yes.
import stuff.
Whoever is going to be our provider of that particular service, we'd be able to ask them. If any members had any other questions, if they could either mail, to the staff, we can bring them up when we're having the talks with people.
Yes, Kevin.
I just had a question on the IT policy. Is that covered in this agenda bit?
Yes.
Yeah. It was well, more of a comment really, to be honest. I think it's an excellent policy, very happy with everything in it. I was just surprised at and I suspect it's being the template policy.
Yeah.
That there wasn't anything on like responsible AI usage or anything like that. That's maybe something that we can look at in the future.
Yeah, this is based on the NALC
Yeah.
model IT policy, and IT, I think, is just grown so fast.
Yeah.
It will come into here eventually, but I think they're busy looking at how they can cover the whole of the IT, because it's going to be a minefield to try and
I
cover.
wake up the next morning and everything's changed. So
Exactly,
yeah.
but that will be something that will be covered in future, I'm sure.
Sure.
Let me just come in on the IT policy. I think it's a good illustration of how, with Gillian's help, working with Ian and Bev, the machinery within the office is in my view, working very well. And thanks to you for the work you've been doing on this policy. If you read through it, it's a very thoroughgoing document. It reads to me as if it's for a much bigger organisation than ours. And where we are, and where I'm trying to suggest for this evening's meeting, is that we vote to adopt this policy, so it's in place, that it's compliant in line with the way that Gillian's trying to take us on this, but that we give Gillian some licence to look at things like AI possibly, but also to try and see if we dilute the policy in some way, because it really is quite extraneous the way it goes through, and very exacting demands on IT practice for us as councillors as well as for staff. So I'm not suggesting that we're trying to get something that's sub-legal and somehow not compliant, but I'm just asking if we vote this policy in, if we then give Gillian some licence to try and have a look and see if she comes back with a diluted version that we might adopt in the future.
Well, once it's actually there, we can then see how everything is working with this policy, and anything that we either need to do or we need to change.
There's probably a bit of common sense involved, right? It's not like you're going to be walking around and, you know, slapping personal phones out of Beth's hand or you know, telling you not for buying something on Amazon, you know?
No, exactly, so it'll be, it's going to be a working document,
Yeah.
we've got it in place, and then we'll be monitoring and reviewing to see how it's progressing along.
Okay, so do we need a formal vote on
We
this?
do.
About adopting the policy?
Yes,
Yes. So the proposition from me then is that this council adopts the information technology policy that's in the papers as drafted and in line with the legislation to come in by the end of this month. That's my proposition to the meeting.
Is that in it?
Okay,
All in favour?
and vote. Okay, thanks for that. We're now on to the meeting of the Cemetery Committee, and we'll all have the papers ahead of tonight's meeting. I want to read through this. We do need to look at item 7 on the second page, just to try to adopt the resolution that's set out in there for Ian as contracts and projects officer to work with ProCut's grounds maintenance. So unless there's any questions about the cemetery committee minutes that are there under this item, I'm asking that we look at this resolving the item under item 7. So a proposition from me then that we resolve as a council to support the contracts and projects officer to work with ProCut's grounds maintenance to carry out the grass cutting at the cemetery. That's a proposition. I need a seconder.
yeah.
Thanks, Rosie. Seconded by you. And a vote, please. Okay, thanks for that. Next item we've got on the agenda is the asset register, and just for clarity, this is simply a statement of the assets that the council holds. We're going to come on later on in the meeting to talk about the asset replacement funds that we have. This is simply the council pulling together, the staff in the office pulling together the statement of the assets that we hold as a town council. Is there anything you want to add to that at all, Gillian?
Yes, this should be presented annually to all members, so you can see when we present the accounts forms at the end of the year that one of the boxes does actually have the total for our assets in. So if the mayor is signing off, you know, £500,000 worth of assets, you need to know what they are.
What's in there?
Yeah, you need to know what's there.
Okay.
What we will be doing during the year as well is just going into all of, I mean, Ian's already been into the garage and had a look at the bits of grass cutting machinery and stuff.
Yeah.
So we will be having a look to see when things should be replaced, as you said, later on. So we will be working on this throughout the year. And we're also looking at items of digital mapping of the equipment. So at any one time, just if members say, can we have a litter bin and such, we can bring a map up and say, well, we've actually got 5 bins around there.
That would be spot on.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the first things I asked you when I joined the council,
Yeah.
was a list of all of things.
I've used the parish digital mapping system, and it was first created for cemeteries because there have been quite a few councils getting into trouble with plots and stuff like that. But Ian's going to have you've already had a little look at the.
Yeah, there's a couple of different options that I've looked at. I think what Kevin sent me one, which is like an AI-based one, and then there's
There's the
another
parish one that's already there.
So I'm trying to get costings and things.
Can I ask, maybe link to our communication strategy in the future, but if we maybe publish that online as well, then in the future, and just for residents to look at.
This asset register will be going on.
No, sorry, the interactive map as well.
Oh,
Yes, I think that is something you
Yeah,
can.
it'd just be a nice thing for residents to be able to see, oh, right, the council have got all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they do different levels, so you can pick out different assets like bush shelters,
yeah.
bins,
Yeah.
everything.
No, because I must admit, a bit of naivety from me, I didn't realise how much the council did till I actually became a councillor.
Yeah.
My
So-
favourite item on the
yeah.
last one that used to be on the website was the park was listed as an asset, and I thought that's, well, it's obviously true, we own it, but
Yeah.
Yeah, because our insurance policy ties up with the assets to make sure that
Right.
we've got various pieces of land insured such as like the Peel Tower and things like that.
Sure.
Okay, well, just the councillors to know, sorry, Will.
Just for my information, why are the major assets like the park and the Peel Tower and the steel footbridge only valued at £1?
Because we didn't, well, the Peel Tower was actually transferred from, I think it was Northumberland County Council at the time. So we have to actually record it in here as we haven't physically purchased
Yeah.
that asset.
So it cost us nothing and that's why it's an item.
However, we do have it insured for a substantial
That was
sum.
my follow-up question.
In case anything ever happened,
If
we have.
if we're only insured for £500,000,
No.
we're in big trouble.
Yeah, but yeah. So the insurance covers it, every asset. So what's recorded in here, it has to be recorded at purchase cost. And as a local council, we don't appreciate our assets. So it doesn't show, so that reflects what we purchased that item for, and we've got that one transferred.
Okay, so it's just for councillors to know, yes, Julie?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then moving on to item 111, investment stroke treasury management and banking strategy. I'm passing over to you again, Julian.
Yes, this is a policy that has to be presented to members every year. One of the things that we were looking at is to see where we could get the most interest from, because as everyone knows, interest on bank accounts is pretty small at the moment. After the Icelandic fiasco with their banks, the Treasury actually set up the CCLA, which is the Churches and Charities and Local Authorities Fund, a public sector deposit fund, which actually does produce higher rates of interest. Because it's not a current account, you put your sum there and you're not really expected to withdraw every week or every month. You can make 2 withdrawals a year because it's there and it's accumulating a lot of interest. It is a AAA institution that has been assessed by Fitch. So what I am asking members is that we actually set up an account with CCLA and have a certain amount put in there.
So that's your recommendation, which we can come to. What Gillian's advised me is that she thinks by making this move that she's recommending to us this evening, it might yield something like £9,000 or £10,000 a year extra into our income, which is nothing but a good move as far as I would see. So, unless there are any questions, I'm going to go to the recommendation that's on page 3, which is members are requested to approve that excess balances stroke reserves be placed in the public sector fund, deposit fund with charities, churches and local authorities, or CCLA, for the period of 1st of April 26 to 31st of March 27. The CCLA deposit fund having a AAA rating, highest quality rating with current interest rates of 3.82%. That's the proposal I'm putting to the meeting this evening. I need a seconder for that. Thanks, Will. Seconded by you, and we need to vote on it. Unanimous. Thanks for your support and work. Thanks for your help, Julian. Okay, next item is 112. It's community engagement event. Need to make it plain in producing this item. This is a decision for this council meeting this evening. We are, as a council, going to be going forward to the residents of Ponteland on a number of occasions this year. It's likely through work that Will and Sue are doing on the Neighbourhood Plan that we go forward with public consultation on that. That's a possibility. We understand from Bob Baker and Adam Harvey we're likely to go forward via the peer review to consult with the public. This is a proposal that we go to this event to be held on the 23rd of April. And from my point of view, I think it's nothing but a good thing that we're going forward and asking the public in a very open and honest way, what we do for them, what we don't do for them, to see if there's any views, reasonable, intelligent, common sense views that they're going to put back to us about what we might do. So I wanted to do it in that transparent way to make sure you're aware that we aren't making a decision on this, not realising we may be asking the public yet again, either this year or possibly into next year. Yes, Will?
Would it be possible to include one of the workshops for the Neighbourhood Plan within that community engagement? In other words, have a display there and somebody attending it?
That would be, yeah, fine.
So what else?
And it shows we've got joined up thinking.
I mean, what we're hoping is the information that we get from the public that day can feed in. So we've got some evidence for when the findings of the peer review come forward, you know, and so we can actually say what residents really like, just in case it comes up in the peer review to scrap something. You know, we need evidence of what people think, of what's working, what isn't working, and how we can improve to meet the peer review standards.
Yes, Phil.
What I'd maybe just recommend, yes, community engagement, great. Very similar to what Will's saying there as well. Do we almost look to either have some stalls or set a bit of an agenda as well? Just from my experience, sometimes if you go into these engagement events and you say to everybody, tell us what you like as residents, it can become a wee bit of a free-for-all. Whereas if we have you may have already thought of this, Gillian, which is, here's what the environments group does, here's what the events group does, here's the planning, and that starts to just help the public shape.
And also if we can give the residents a cost per service, you know, because when you sort of like boil it down, things cost like £2.50 per annum, you know, and do you think that's good value?
Yeah.
And when people think, well, you can't get a bottle of pop for that now.
Yeah.
So what the plan is to have the services broken down, but then have other posters to say, you know, these are the parks we have, what do you think of ABC? These are, you know, and just itemise it down so we can then get the public to say, well, actually, you know, we like this, we don't like that, or suggest other things and give them post-it notes so they can put it on so we can gather that information, or have leaflets that they can take away and, you know, let us know later. We're also hoping to have it on the website as well. Ian's done a QR code, haven't you, so you can, we're going to try and get that
just
to feed
try
through.
and link in through the QR code, and we'll probably get the police along as well.
So the proposition is, as per the paper, that on Thursday the 23rd of April, between 1 PM and 8 PM, there'll be this event in the Leisure Centre, trying to publicise, not unlike the way you were suggesting, Dan, that it's what we do. Gillian saying this is what some of the things cost. Please give us some feedback.
Yeah.
Councillors are very welcome to come along and support this event. I don't know how much time I can give to it, but I'll certainly be there for probably the majority of the time, if not all of the time on that day, 23rd of April. Yes, so we agreed.
Great, yes.
And we're actually putting a sort of flyer in the Pont News as well, so people who cannot get to the event can give us some feedback as well.
Right. Do we need to vote on it, Gillian?
Yeah, well, yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, so show of hands and support this. Yeah. Thanks for that.
So will you be coming along with the neighbourhood plan, or
I'll
can you
work
give
with
us?
Amina on it. We will both be there. And anybody else will be doing it. We'll make sure the neighbourhood plan stand is now.
Could you just do us a favour, Gillian, and once it's firmed up, just let us know the times and things like that, and I'll try and...
It's 1 till 8. I mean, I said I would come through to do the 4 till 8 session, and we're all going to, you know, so we'll have staff there.
Yeah, I'll try and block it out, that's all, it'll be along as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Right. Okay, we've got 5 grant applications to look at this evening. Just give a bit of comment before we come on to consider them. Very importantly, the first one, Dalton Village Hall, it's already in the budget for us to give that sum to them. So when this paper was prepared by the staff to point out quite helpfully the 3639 remaining, if we're minded to support the Dalton Village Hall grant application, then the monies that we may decide for the others will come out of that 3639 figure, not out of the 1500 won't immediately dent that figure, if I can make myself clear on that. So if we can do them in turn then, first of all there's a grant application for £1,500 for Dalton Village Hall. Made it plain it's already in the budget. The recommendation is to consider the grant application. Where are we going with this one? Yes, please.
I think it was a really good idea. I would have supported it even if we didn't have the money in the budget anyway. I think it's really important that we support our local village halls that play a key part in things like Storm Marwin. So I'm glad that they're looking to develop. And yeah, I'm happy to propose this money.
Propose that we go ahead.
Yeah.
I think Dalton was not in some difficulty, this village hall, a couple of years ago, so I think anything we can do to sort of keep it
I
going.
think they've got a new committee because they seem to be running regular quizzes and
Yeah,
bits of
yeah,
things now. Yeah, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
Proposal
happy to
from
second.
Rosie we go for.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that.
Happy to second it. So, okay, we need a vote on that then, please. So it's unanimously agreed for Ponteland Village Hall. Second one, Ponteland United Juniors under 13s girls football, asking for about 2,000 towards going to the tournament in Barcelona. Views on this request? Yes, Kevin.
I'm a bit more sceptical of this one because it's my understanding, and I don't know the ins and outs of how Ponteland United is set up, but it's my understanding that actually they're a relatively well-off organisation and they've got lots of branches and lots of teams. I think that £2,000 is quite a significant amount of money. Personally, and I know I've mentioned this before, I'd rather that big grants like that were factored in during the budget setting process rather than coming to this the grant item on the agenda. On that basis, I'm probably going to vote against giving it, but I welcome other people's opinions on it as well.
Yes, Rosie.
So I have a little bit of a concern around as well because I know Ponteland United have around 50 teams, and I think it's really hard for one of them to come to us and ask for 2,000 and us we say yes, and then 2 months later another team comes and asks for money and then say no to them.
Yeah.
And we also have the rugby team, there's a tennis club locally. It's just really hard to give money and then not to another. I did want to suggest that, I can't remember the name of it, but we gave some money to an organisation that deals with sports in Northumberland a few months ago, Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that part of that was you could apply to them for grants, and we did say we could give some money on the basis that they support sport in Ponteland. So I wonder if we can maybe redirect them to get in touch with that organisation if
Okay,
they disagree.
suggestion.
We did only give them £250 though.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Like Rosie said, Ponteland United have loads of teams and they have loads of sponsors as well. So if they went to the different sponsors, I mean, I'm sure they could get £2,000
Yeah.
out of them.
So you're against 2,000. You're suggesting we direct them elsewhere?
I take Bev's point that we didn't give them a huge amount of money, but I believe that organisation is set up so you can go and get grant funding from them.
Yeah.
I just worry with all of the great sport options we've got in the village, it's hard to say yes to one and then no to another one that might come along.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
I just did a quick bit of math and worked out that if we gave them half what they asked for, we could afford to give everybody else what they've asked for.
Well, if you do the maths on this.
When does the budget reset? Because if
1st of April.
so the next okay, so this is in
Yeah.
effect the last meeting.
This is the last lot of grants that we'll do this year.
I don't think we've ever given money to Ponteland United teams before, apart from earlier this year we did for the women's
World
did,
Cup
yeah.
thing,
and
wasn't it?
there was a lot of toing and froing about that, wasn't there, before you actually agreed. And the compromise was £600 and I think they wanted quite a bit more than that, so that's just a bit of background, but it's not the same category, it's not the girls, but there will be lots of other girls
yeah.
teams within there.
I think it's as Rosie rightly says, it's tricky, and Michaela says as well, when there's so many other teams. There's 50 odd, and
Yeah.
I think if it was going to Ponteland United as a collective, and it was going to get filtered down, then it could be a wee bit easier, but it's...
Is there a way forward where we ask the office, perhaps Bev or Gillian, to try to liaise with the United Juniors and let them understand our problem? Because we're aware that there are a parade of teams and we're not unsupportive of it. I mean, I think it's a wonderful thing. I mean, there are a parade of teams in the way that we're recognising in our remarks this evening. And I think we do a lot to support activities like this more generally, community-based stuff like this. Should we go back to them and try and say our difficulty is we were to give them 200, 500 or whatever, we then end up with a parade of other requests from the other 49 other teams, if that's the right maths on all of this. Should we make a further inquiry, do you think?
I don't think it hurts. I think it...
Yeah, try and find out some more.
Well, I was just going to say, I quite like Will's idea of trust your maths. It's never my strong point. But if we give them 1,000, I'd be happy to do that. If that then exhausts the budget for the rest of the small grants budget.
Going also on what Alan said, if we go back to them and say we have this issue with the different teams, could we not give them that 1,000 to the United as a whole,
Yeah.
and then allow them to distribute it down? Because then we're not playing favourites with a particular
Yeah, I
team.
think that's more sensible.
Okay, yeah, so it's a good proposal, and what I would add to that, it's a very good idea, Rosie, and what I would add to it is that we need that dialogue between the office and the team, so that if we come back with that, it's something they can handle from their side, yes? Yes, Will?
Sorry, Alan, just because I'm new to all this. If we don't spend all that little bit of budget, is it just carried over to next year for us to spend on what we want, or is it set aside?
It goes into balance, it goes into
So
balances.
if we don't spend it, we can have it for something else?
Yeah.
It's not earmarked.
Yeah. So
But
the,
it won't enhance your grant budget next year, no.
it won't increase it.
It'll
I
just
don't
go,
know what you mean, I don't know.
Well,
We'll
we
get
have
to
to-
1,000 and then it'll just go into the amount that the council hasn't spent this year. It
In
won't
total.
specifically go to any earmark.
Yes, so it's our money to do what
Yeah,
we want.
it's
Whatever, like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not money that we've like ring fence and said,
No,
that's
no,
a
no,
donation
no.
first.
So there's a proposal from Rosie, sort of counterpoint proposal to the grant application, which says we go back to Ponteland United Juniors, offering them £1,000 for their teams, and we have the office have a dialogue with them, so that we know that that's going to work from their point of view. That's the proposal, isn't it?
Yeah, we go back to Ponteland United, we say we can't, or we don't want to differentiate between the teams, we can give you X amount of money, £1,000, and then they deal with that as they
Fine.
see fit.
And if that works for them, then we're okay with the £1,000. If the office finds that that doesn't work for them, then it's got to come back to this meeting.
Sorry about this, I just think you could also go back and say, actually, if we give you the £2,000, we'd have to take it off somebody else.
I think we're voting on your proposal for the £1,000, yes?
Yeah.
So we need a seconder for that. Kevin seconding, we need to vote on it. Unanimous. Okay, Newcastle Airport Squadron ATC. That was helpful to me with this application because in the way that you can see from the fact that it's badged as Newcastle Airport, this is actually a Newcastle-based ATC unit, and some people might be minded to say, well, why don't we invite 733 Squadron ATC to tap into perhaps the community chest, or to ask Newcastle City Council if they were minded to support them. I think we need to also, I think that's an interesting perspective on this, but we also need to take into account that some of the cadets that will be attending this will be from Ponteland. So with that background, I'm really open to any views. Yes, Kevin?
Yeah, I actually had a note before I'd even read that this was in the application, and it would be great to support this if they came along and, you know, did the marching band at our Remembrance Parade. So I thought of that before I even read that they were going to do it, and I'm very happy to support it. I think it's actually, you know, a relatively small contribution from us in the grand scheme of it, and I think that we all loved having the Piper at the Remembrance Parade. It would be great to further enhance that, maybe have them at some other events that we're looking at hosting throughout the year in the future potentially. So when it
you're
comes
proposing
time,
1,200?
yeah, but obviously open to hearing other people's thoughts and discussions as well before I formally move that.
Any other views?
I think it's a similar view to Kevin, which is just, I think we ask them to work with the town council to support events. I can't remember how much the paper was last year, Bev, for remembrance, but
It's £100, isn't it?
a few £100, no, I can't
Yeah.
remember, it was a few £100.
so it could even be in the future if we save one and use the marching band there, and then it starts to, you know, give us a return.
It doesn't have to be the full 1,200. Very often these grant applications, it's very often these grant applications we pare back what the people are actually asking us to consider. So Kevin's talking about the full 1,200. If others were minded to do less than that, it's open to us as a council what we're prepared to do. Then towards the cost of purchasing instruments.
I'm happy to support the 1,200 because I know that there are a lot of young people who I see who are in the cadets, and we see them walking up towards that way. So I think, you know, given that we're hopefully wanting to support young people and encourage them to do activities within Ponteland, I'm happy to also second if you move that proposal.
Okay, so proposal from you then, Kevin, for the 1,200. We need a seconder for it. Rosie, so we need to vote on it.
Or did you not?
Okay, we need to do some maths on all this, be careful. We're saying 1,000 for the United Juniors, that's 2,200 of the 3,600. We're now being asked by Ponteland Rugby Club and to look at for their beer festival a grant of £250. Any views on this evening? Yes, Dan.
My view is I would support this. I think it brings a lot of people into Ponteland, it supports a lot of Ponteland businesses as well. And I think it's a very small amount they're asking for the council there to back something which I think gives big benefits to a lot of residents here.
So you're proposing that we go with that £250?
I would propose that, yes.
Right, we need a second for that. Yes, Will. We need to vote on it. Unanimous. And then we have Ponteland Party in the Park with an application for £1,000 towards their event. When I read this, some of you that have read through the papers for this evening, you'll see that the community hub discussions that we had back in February, there were different figures mentioned in that discussion. So I'm just highlighting that before we come to consider this grant application of £1,000.
And that was my exact, obviously I was in the same meeting that you referred to there, Alan. Apologies again for putting the team on the spot. Do we recall how much Party in the Park got last year in terms of a grant?
In recent years they've got £1,000 from us.
Right.
In the past they've got more like £500, but we used to book the toilets for them and the bins and pay for those. And we wanted to take a step back because we weren't necessarily there on the day, and there was complaints that they ran out of toilet paper. We got the flack about that, so it was decided as a council that we would give them a bigger grant, and they would organise things like that themselves. Yeah. So that's how it's inflated from 500 approximately to 1,000 now, and they have had that for the last few years.
Right. So.
Yes, Rosie.
I was just going to clarify, so because I read the events, the meeting notes that you're talking about, so are they asking us still for the £1,000 or was that dropped to the £500? I know the Harrison Fund had...
What happened in that meeting is that Dan and I were there and we were asking about the costings of the meeting, and in a way it's recorded in the minutes. Dan very generous from the fund that he, as I say, was offering support for that event, as is recorded in the minutes of that meeting. The maths was showing that there was a £500 deficiency, and quite rightly I couldn't say as one person there that this council would support that. I just was going back to the fact that traditionally we have. One of the considerations in all of this is that alongside as indicating 500 in that meeting, there is, in line with what Bev I think was trying to say, there is the burden of things like indemnity insurance on Party in the Park. And it's a matter for this meeting this evening about how generous or not that we wish to be. They're asking for the 1,000, it's a matter for us about which way we reply to that.
Yeah, and I think to I completely agree with you, Alan, and to just follow on from that, just for those who aren't aware, in the past the town council's helped Party in the Park with indemnity insurance, but we've decided that they have to do that via different means from now on. And that's going to cost estimations anything from £200 to £400 would seem to be the rough and ready.
Oh,
so if we were to say £1,000, £500 mentioned here, plus the £400 say for the insurance, we're starting to get to that £1,000 figure anyway.
Yeah.
Just for the record, this application came in 2 days after your
Yes.
meeting with Party in the Park.
Yes.
So it did take into account all of those conversations that had been had.
Yeah, and I was at a separate Party in the Park meeting,
It came
and there seemed to be a bit of a disagreement between the £500 referred to here and the £1,000 applied for in the past as well. So.
Well, my proposal from me this evening is that we go for the £1,000 for Party in the Park. It's a very big community event. It's got all this background that we've touched on. I'm making that proposal to this meeting.
Seconded.
You're seconding it, Dan?
Yes.
Yeah. We need to vote on it. That's £1,000 agreed for Party.
We have asked them specifically when they brought their grant application form in that we would like to see that the town council were recognised for their contribution, because we never have been. And so that's something I've had a conversation with them about.
So if we can have that qualifier, so that when the staff go back to Party in the Park, we say we want some recognition. Sorry, Michaela, you can...
Just on that, do you know when we do give like grants to places, would it not be worth like putting it in Pond News and Views that, because we kind of like contribute to things and nobody actually knows about it, apart from that particular person who's asked for it, and I do think we should be acknowledged and like just have a little section saying this month or quarter or whatever, this is
Some
what we
recognition for what we
contributed.
are doing.
I do think we should be recognised.
Yeah,
Very
agreed.
good point.
Because it's obviously as a condition of funding, point 6, which is supported by.
Yeah.
But you're right, we should square that off and put it in the news and views as well to say this event's,
Sort of
yeah.
I was just going to say, is this conditions of funding thing, is this in effect going to be a standing policy for all our grants going forward? I would like it to be.
I've put it on next year's and I've
Okay.
included it in this month. Anybody that's put a grant application in has received that. I'm just trying to...
No, I think it's excellent. I think it's much needed. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yes, well.
We should have a display or a board or something at this community event saying these are the people we've given money to this year.
Yeah.
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 I mean, we do look generous this month because it's the end of the month, it's the end of the year.
Well, it's
Whereas
okay, well,
it could have been that we only had £500 left, but we, when we publicise it, we'll look as if we're quite generous.
We've got about £500, right?
Yeah, something like that.
To come back on that, what we have done in the past is taken a gazebo at the Party in the Park event, and we as councillors are able to go along and chat with the public, and there's no reason why, if we were to do that this year at this event, we could have that display with the grants that we've given, so the public can see what we've done. Yeah?
That might be another opportunity for community engagement with the Neighbourhood Plan as well.
Yeah.
May as well
Yeah.
do joint up thinking with it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, right, thanks for that. That's all the grant applications. We've then got this community hub meeting which I was just talking about a few minutes ago. I think the notes of that I think are fairly straightforward, unless anyone wants to raise it, just to try and keep people informed. The background being that with the wheelbarrow race being under threat towards the end of last year, Dan and I in particular were very concerned that these programme events that make Ponteland the community-based town that it is, that these events are going to go ahead. And if you look at the mood music from that meeting, it doesn't guarantee things, but it certainly was positive feedback to say things seem to be in place for the events to take place across the year. So that's, sorry, Michaela.
I obviously get some money from the county to spend on the area as well, and I want to put some money aside so the Santa sleigh can be quite a big event. So part of Ponteland's money, Ponteland Town Council money, and some of my money, I would like to keep back this year, so it can be a really nice big event for the children.
Great.
That's what I would like to do.
I think as maybe if we loop you in on the next events working party, Michaela, because we had some good ideas there
Exactly.
about doing something on the square, some camera, you know, and
Really something.
yeah.
Okay, yes.
I wanted to ask a question on the police meeting. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that first before I did so.
What I want to touch on with the police meeting is that in the interest of openness, as you understood what was discussed at that meeting, this is one of those audio recordings, shows how clever this technology is. The police did ask that we didn't publicise their meeting. So these notes are shared with you on the basis that you understand as councillors what was discussed and enables you to ask questions about what was discussed. And the report of this meeting will not otherwise be publicised.
So can I ask a question about something that's in the report?
Yes?
Yeah, there's a few references to who's going to have ownership, and in particular on an e-scooter awareness campaign it says that ownership's going to be with the local council. Does that mean NCC, or does that mean this council? Because that seems like quite a big resource cost for this council to fund an awareness
Won't be
campaign.
anything to do with us.
It's NCC, fine, cool.
It's not
Yes,
that
sir.
clever.
Is this perhaps a partnership that we should be directing Mr Robson's complaints to?
Mr Robson?
Yes. So we can just say somebody else is dealing with it.
I think that's how it came up, but that particular gentleman, I think that's how it came up, and the police were aware of him and his issues with things like that as well.
You know, he contacted Rosie and I, and I feel out my depth with it. It sounds like it's county issues to to me. And if there's a community partnership or something that is dealing with such things, then that's maybe where he ought to be.
Yeah. In line with what they're saying, the police are aware of his complaints.
I know that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll bear that in mind.
Okay, if we can move on then, it's the events woodland party. The new chairs, do you want to say anything on it?
Yeah, I think just a point of reference, we've got a date booked now, Bev, for the Doggy Fun Day,
Yeah,
which is up, I can't remember it off the top of my head, apologies.
25th of July.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah.
Looking beyond you, Dan.
Yes,
Larry,
yeah.
the organiser.
Yeah. And the idea of that was to give some space between the dog event and Kirkley as well there. So that's good news with that. On point 5D, just linked with what we've just spoken about, trying to really make a bit of a bigger thing for Christmas in terms of a light switch on, getting the sleigh coinciding with that, and maybe having a bit more of an event on the square itself. So really welcome from Michaela if we can work with the county council on that too in the future in terms of funding, all the better. But I think the group you and I are part of, Alan, in terms of that community engagement hub or events engagement hub, will be progressing with that as the year moves on. So we'll update on there. Moving on to kind of the ending of the business and the report. We took a decision really to look at some options about what we could do in terms of holiday clubs for our youth. And this is something I spoke about and something which Ian Clough's been really useful in terms of digging in and finding information out in terms of it. And what I'd like to maybe discuss today is kind of the agenda item 1152 there, which was Ian's has kindly been across to the Leisure Centre and looked at some options for both the Easter and the May half term as well, and you can see some of the approximate pricings in there and some of the different options. And the idea really is maybe just a starter for 10 to look at sponsored youth provision for our kids. This is obviously for school-going kids during the day, but if this works, I think it can give us some options in terms of places to go in the night time, and maybe options such as maybe booking a sports hall on an evening and having half a court for football, half a court with tables and what have you. It can also maybe help with our police engagement in the future as well, where they can maybe go and speak to some of the children. And then further forward, I think it's mentioned in here, could be an idea of working with any youth initiative as well, and maybe bringing this into that sphere there as well.
Okay, thanks for that. Yes, okay.
I think it's a super idea, because I put on Ponteland Parents a couple of weeks ago about is there any sort of youth clubs, like just looking around for my child basically, and the influx of messages that I received saying there's not, and we really want something for the youth, so it'll definitely be well received.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I come to you, Rosie, just by background, we have done this before, haven't we, and something along these lines, and it was very well received.
Yeah, it was
Lyle, I think.
something Lyle
Yeah.
funded.
So, but yeah, I'll come in there. So I organised at the Leisure Centre when it newly opened. So post-COVID, they had a bit of layoffs there, so we did something, the council sponsored it, and I sponsored it myself as well. We also did something, I think it was last year as well. I got in touch with the new management of the youth centre when it came to Places for Leisure, and we give a donation there for them to put on something during the summer holidays for the children to do, because it does get expensive during the summer holidays, particularly the 6 weeks holidays, and it is for all residents of Ponteland to come and use it. They go on soft play, they wall climbing, and they can have face pins there, see a clown there, and do something healthy as well. So it's quite a good initiative, and it went down really well with the Leisure Centre. So I think we could do that. I think it'd be nice to do that again.
And that's the feedback you've had from the Leisure Centre, wasn't it, Ian? That
Yeah, that
it
was
very
really well
successful.
attended.
Yeah. I'm looking for a steer from you, Dan, about what it is that you would like to do. There's various options mentioned here, and I'd like you to try and see if you can steer us towards which way you would like us to look at this. But I can also tell you before inviting you to do that, Dan, that we're going to come on when we've closed the meeting formally and we're into other business that we need to consider this evening, that there might be some easement on the finance side that might help with
Yeah.
the funding of this. So after a steer from you about what you would like us to consider.
Yeah, obviously some of the steer here involves children from different ages, everything from probably a 3G, which might be some of the older girls and boys playing football, down to soft play, which would be for a certain age group. And this is kind of where I defer to everybody in the room, because some of us have got children all of different ages, and some of us have, or family members, etc. as well. So, you know, my view would always be, we should look at the Easter holiday and maybe look at all the sessions, get the data there, and see which ones were best attended by which age groups. Because just because we've got May half term, we've got some examples in there, doesn't mean we need to do those, because we've got longer to May. We can almost double down on what's worked really well and maybe withdraw some of what hasn't.
That's very much like a menu that we can pick and
Yes.
say, well, we want 3
Okay,
hours
so-
there,
so-
2 hours of that.
So what's the proposition? Because there seems to be a mood to support what you're suggesting in here.
Yeah.
What's the proposition? Do you want us to? Is it about £3,000 the overall cost?
The overall cost would be, well, if we included the Easter and the May half term, it would be closer to 4. But if we just look at the Easter for now, we've got a total of 1377 for day 1 and 1104 for day 2.
So if we say then that your proposal to the meeting is that we look at the about 2,500 in those Easter events.
Yes.
But we're also saying, in line with your remarks, that we see how well those work, and can we give Dan some license, Dan and Ian some license, so that if it's working well, they get the chance to go on and look at this the May half term.
That would be really helpful, because it means we then don't need to wait for the next meeting to book May if we've got
Yeah.
good results.
I think it's great.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we need a proposition. You proposing that then, Dan?
Yes, please.
Yes. And second, do you, Rosie?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to vote on it then. Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you all.
Okay. So, the only thing I would say on the Mayor's report, which is mostly self-explanatory, is there's an offer from John Harrison at the Memorial Hall to come to this council meeting to tell us about where they are with things, what their future plans are. This all arises from John and I having a meeting about a month ago, and him just giving me a general update as per the report. We don't need to decide this evening, but our councillors happy for me to try and schedule in for possibly John and a couple of his team to come along and give us a briefing one of our meetings, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So, Michaela, are you able to have another council report?
Yeah, I mean, meanwhile, we've just on the group, has Ron got anything?
No, nothing.
No, we haven't got anything.
Nothing to report? No. Okay. What we have under 118 are the finance reports for January and February. All the papers are there as per normal, all the details are there in front of us. Any questions, I'm sure the staff are here to try and help with that. Otherwise, they're just really happy with the notes. Yeah? Okay. That being the case, then what I'm doing is closing this council meeting, and we're going into closed session.